Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Week 10 of the high school football season. Our weekly Facebook Live takes us to Westerville Central, where the Warhawks are preparing to take on the Olentangy Braves tomorrow night. I'm Dave Purpura, along with Jarrod, Ulrey, and we have Warhawks coach John Magistro joining us for a couple minutes at the start of the program. Coach, thank you for taking a couple of minutes to come over.
Very welcome.
Well, you've had a nice stretch here the last 3 weeks. What is it, 2 out of your last 3, I think?
Yeah.
And 11th in Region 3, or Region 2, excuse me, unfortunately dropped a couple spots this morning.
Yeah, that's what we heard.
Yeah, but that said, what's gone so well to put you in this position to be contending for a spot going into tomorrow night?
Well, it's nice to know that you still have a chance, and we played a nice football game last week against Westerville South, who's obviously one of our big opponents. And what I like about it is our kids, even though we've lost a couple close games, just awful good teams, we're still in there battling a little bit, and that is what I appreciate about them the most.
Okay.
Coach, your career's kind of at a crossroads this year. You've announced that you're not going to be coming back to Westerville Central next year, but you've had so many wonderful experiences, I'm sure, over the years. What are some things that you're going to remember about, being here and some of the other places you've been?
And it's the truth. The thing that I really like about coaching is, I told someone you can be great in 2016 and then 2017 is forgotten about. And the thing I enjoyed last week, we had our last home game here, and I had kids from Bel Air that came back, kids that I coached at Westerville Central. I had so many texts and emails, and that stands out to me more than, I don't know, any awards I got or any championships we won. That will stay with me for a lifetime.
And that said, your years in this program, what are the biggest ways you've seen it grow into a team that's contending for a spot every year?
Well, and I came in 2009, and they were, I think, 0-10 the year before, and maybe won 2 or 3 games before that. And it was just, I think they just needed a little bit of change of culture. To me, kids are kids. Everybody says, well, there's good kids and bad kids, and maybe a little bit, but we just changed it and put a little bit of discipline in their lives. Some kids have to be taught discipline. Some kids are raised with discipline, and I think that is the thing we changed the most. Discipline and love for your teammates. We break every huddle with family, and I always tell guys, don't say it unless you mean it.
Sure.
Because it's got to mean something.
Huge game tomorrow night, obviously. Central versus Olentangy. Both teams battling for playoff spot. What are some of the key matchups heading into this thing in your mind?
Well, Olentangy, I don't know if you ever watched them offensively, but they are a very good offensive team. Not that their defense is bad, but if you watch them in past games, which we do with film and everything, and there are games where they were winning by 21 points. And you're talking about Liberty, and you're talking about Olentangy Orange, some real good football teams. So I am impressed with the way they run things. They don't do much to beat themselves, especially on the offense side of the ball. And our defense has got we got a tough time ahead of us. And I like to think that our offense is pretty good too.
Yeah.
So, like you said, Allen's been running well. Our offensive line, even though we're pretty much diminished right now, those guys did a very good job last week.
And your quarterback, how's he doing?
We just had our last lap, and he had to take his in a sling, and so we're down to LeBron's Davis, and we feel comfortable with them, and he's had a week now. Last week we threw him in there, and this week he got all the reps in practice. So we feel with LeBron's, he'll make some good decisions.
Coach, we appreciate your time. I'm looking forward to covering the game tomorrow night. Chat with you afterwards. Thank you, Coach Magistro.
Thanks again.
Appreciate it.
John Magistro, coach of the Westerville Central Warhawks, as they plan to head over to Lewis Center. Again, they will be to take on the Olentangy Braves tomorrow night. And what I quickly alluded to at the top of that was some news that came across this morning, was that Upper Arlington had to forfeit a game against Central Crossing. Well, that doesn't just affect those two teams.
It affects a lot of teams.
It has a spider web, and Westerville Central is one of them, because Central beat them back in week 2. And unfortunately for them, what happened, they dropped from 9th to 11th in the region, and it makes it an even tougher hill to climb when they were already on the outside looking in coming into
the boost that they'll get from if they can beat Olentangy, that's going to help. But there's so many variables. And I guess maybe we can talk about this later, but actually, that win probably helps. I know it helps Reynoldsburg in Division I Region 3, because Reynoldsburg has a win over them, and that's they're not quite in a position where if they win their game tomorrow night that they're in, but it really helps them. And I guess if you're just Westerville Central, you just put your nose to the grindstone, I guess, and just say, hey, we got to take care of what we can take care of, and if they play like they did last week, they got a real chance. This Alan Smith.
Here's the real deal. Yep.
What a first half he had last week, and I mean 276 yards, and he had a lot of those touchdowns in the first half.
I'm looking forward to seeing that tomorrow night. It's going to be two quite competent offenses going against each other. When you have Alan Smith as a running back here, Olentangy, Riley Bruning has had a heck of a year at quarterback. You know, he's been their main starter. I guess this will be his 7th or 8th game, or whatever, as the consistent starter for them, and so many weapons, both running and receiving wise. It's going to be a fun battle tomorrow night to see whether offense or defense takes over the game.
Last week Olentangy had 177 yards passing, 188 rushing. So they can do it all. I mean, and if they can get into the playoffs, they'll be a tough out.
And they're potentially, as a 6th seed right now, they've got a chance to face Dublin Kaufman, who they beat early in the season. They may end up meeting one of their sister schools, who they lost to, earlier this month. I mean, there are so many interesting variables with that. Olentangy is still 6th in the region. As we said, Westerville Central is 11th. After this, you will be fighting traffic and heading out east as Gahanna visits Pickerington North tonight, one of the Thursday night games. This is one that, you look at the numbers offensively, both of these teams can put up a lot of points. What is it? North is averaging 38.5, Gahanna 32. This should be a fun game you're going to see tonight.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about the offenses. I mean, obviously, Gahanna's quarterback, Mike Lowry, the guys at Pickerington North know him. They know him really well because he used to be there. So, when you look at Mike Lowry versus Jimmy Wyrick on paper, they've both had really, really good seasons this year. And I think Wyrick has kind of elevated his game in some ways that have to do with his feet, actually. I mean, he's rushed for, we think of him as this, guy that drops back, throws a lot of touchdowns, which he does, but he's rushed for 669 yards or something this year. I mean, he's really, really dangerous. That helps because Pickerington North's running game is not quite as good as Gahanna's, because Gahanna's got Justice Harris, who's also having a really good season for Gahanna. So
he was banged up temporarily early in the season. I think, did he only miss one game for them? I think that's what it was.
I believe it's like parts of a couple games. Yeah. But I suppose as far as the playoffs are concerned, this is actually probably a more important game, maybe for Pickerington North, because
that's fair.
Right now they're 7th, and if they lose, they still may be okay. But they want to try to move up as much as they can. There's a kind of interesting scenario that if Huber Heights Wayne beats Trotwood Madison next week, they would get a big bump up in Division I Region 3. Okay. And if that happens, and Pick Central wins and Pickerington North wins, we could have a rematch in Week 1 of the playoffs, Pickerington Central versus Pickerington North. One of the greatest games that's out this year.
We suspected that might happen. I don't think anybody thought it was going to happen in Week 1.
Yeah. Well, and I suppose to be totally honest about it, I mean, I don't think Wayne will beat them, but so maybe it won't come down to that. But it's always fun to think about that scenario. And then on the flip side, if Gahanna loses, they probably are still going to make. They're going to make it into Region 2, I think. So.
As of this moment, I think Region 3 is like 3 teams from the Dayton area. Then you have Springfield, and then 4 teams from Columbus. Now, Reynoldsburg hopes to become one of those 4 teams if they were able to win tomorrow night and punch their ticket in. Olentangy Orange and Westerville South. It's another OCC Buckeye Division game. Orange looking to rebound from that loss to Olentangy Liberty last week, and if they can get some help, if Westerville North were to upset Liberty tomorrow night and Orange wins, then they can earn a share of the title.
It may have been a little better for Westerville South if Orange had not lost last week, to be honest.
Yeah, that does.
You got to think you got to think Orange is going to come out really focused in this game. Can Westerville South pull the upset? Sure, it's possible. I mean, anything's possible when you got Jalen Gill.
And they're going to have to win tomorrow because they were another one of those teams that was affected by the forfeit, that they fell from 8th, I think it was, in the region down to 10th.
Yeah.
And that lifted Canal Winchester, who we'll talk about momentarily, up to 8th. And Dublin Scioto is still hanging around at 9th. That is a really interesting picture in Region 7.
Oh, it is. I mean, there's so many. I wrote this down earlier today. There's technically still 11 teams from Central Ohio that are in that could make that are still battling for playoff spots in Region 7. And there's a few other ones that, I think it said that there was only there was 16 teams still alive or something heading into tomorrow, which is kind of crazy.
Well, I wrote it down in here somewhere, and I think it's like 5 or 6 teams are within a point of each other.
Yeah.
Down in that 8 or 12 region. There in Region 7. And talking about this matchup, we haven't even mentioned the Bryce Houston, unfortunately, is out not only for the rest of the football season, however long it goes, but I think I read that he's going to be out for wrestling as well.
Must be really serious.
Torn right ACL, torn meniscus, and his right knee suffered, I want to say late in the ball game, although I might be incorrect about that, when they took on Olentangy Liberty.
He's got a bright future. He'll be playing in college.
At Ohio University, I believe, is where he's going to be headed down to. We mentioned Scioto a minute ago. They're 5-4. They are taking on 6-3 Hilliard Darby tomorrow night. Darby is 10th in the region. We talked to Coach John Tagata last week. They're hanging around 10th in Region 3. Scioto's 9th in Region 7. This is an interesting one, too, as these two teams wrap up the regular season against each other.
I think if Darby is able to win that game, if they're able to win this game and maybe get Reynoldsburg to lose to Lancaster, that would maybe open the door for them. I mean, both Reynoldsburg and Darby are probably going to need Springfield to lose to Kettering Fairmont. That's going to be the thing that would open the door. I mean, there's a possibility that Springfield could win, and there'd still be a few things that would happen that would maybe work out, but there's a lot higher of a probability they can make it if that happens.
Well, yeah, Springfield's just one of those teams hanging.
They don't have quite as many points. I mean, and that's a kind of coin flip game. Fairmont versus Springfield. It's 6-3. So.
All right, and we will see how that one shapes up. And back to Region 7, Canal Winchester jumped into 8th place this afternoon because of the shakeup in points. They're going to try and ruin Big Walnut's chances at an outright OCC Capital Championship. Big Walnut, one of the turnaround stories of the second half of the year. They were 0-5. They won 4 in a row. And Canal Winchester, seeing if they can go in there. I might add, I'm the only one who picked them tomorrow night, so we'll see how it goes. But that could be an interesting matchup in the league as well. They're looking not only to play spoiler, but much more importantly for them, secure their first shot in the playoffs in 5 years.
You're the only one that picked Canal?
Yes.
I mean, I was driving over here saying, maybe I should have picked Canal because, I mean, especially if I'd have known, maybe this is a win gets them in. I mean, maybe it kind of changed things a little bit. But, yeah, I mean, that's a couple of really great stories. I mean, the thing about Big Walnut is their defense has been good all season. I mean, going back to week 1 when they had that 3-0 loss to Johnstown. And I think everybody was like, kind of a puzzling result, but Johnstown ended up being the team that we all thought they would be, which is a playoff team. And Big Walnut has been this team that built on that and has continued to play great defense once they got into the OCC Capital and they're playing some teams that they're a lot closer in caliber with and that they're playing in the non-league. So. All
right, and we will see what happens. Yeah. Scott Gerfen will be there covering that for us tomorrow night. A couple big City League tilts tomorrow night. Independence at Walnut Ridge, 8-1 against 8-0 Walnut Ridge. Walnut Ridge did not play. What was it? A couple
2 weeks ago.
It was 2 weeks ago. Yeah, and then they played Marion Franklin. I want to say last week. If I'm getting my schools right. Walnut Ridge is safely first in Region 7 for right now. That could be interesting. So is Northland Beechcroft in the City North side of things.
Well, I'll be at the Northland Beechcroft game because that's for the City League North Championship. Or it's for part of it anyway. If Beechcroft wins, they get the City League North title outright, and they would win their 26th consecutive league game. That's no small
accomplishment wherever you are.
Now, on the flip side, if Northland wins, then we're going to have a 3-way tie for the championship between Northland, Beechcroft, and Mifflin.
Okay.
So, yeah, and I mean, Northland is kind of hanging on to some outside chance of making the playoffs. I mean, a lot of things would have to turn their way, but actually, if you look at the teams they beat and the teams that they beat, or if you look at, if you look at the teams that are a little bit ahead of them, some of those teams have some tough games, and if you look at the teams that Northland has beaten, some of those teams could win some games this week. So, I mean, they're kind of hanging on to it.
Yep.
And as far as the other one's concerned, I mean, Walnut Ridge and Independence that's a great matchup on paper. Two teams headed to the playoffs. It should be a pretty high-powered. I would think it'd be a real good game.
That City South has been really interesting here the last 3 weeks with all those heavyweights punching each other. A couple more to mention before we get out of here. 6-3 London and 8-1 Whitehall. Whitehall is above that fray that we discussed earlier in Region 7. London is 7th in its region, down in Division 4, Region 16, but it looks like they're safely in.
That's a red-hot Whitehall team. I mean, they've been playing really well. Very impressive.
Yep, and we'll see if they can do as well as Academy did against London.
We'll be at that. We'll have coverage of that game tomorrow night, too.
Yep, absolutely. Jerome looking to secure its playoff spot in Region 2. They are 7th. They take on Worthington Kilbourne. I think this next one is a game that you've covered for many, many years, and it's going to be an oddity for you not to be there tomorrow night. DeSales and Waterson, that big CCL rivalry.
I'm a little sad, honestly. I mean, I've been to 25 consecutive, I think, DeSales versus Waterson games, and I'm not going to be able to cover that game tomorrow night because both teams are basically eliminated. I mean, if some miracles happen, like Eastmore losing to Afrocentric and Granville losing to Watkins Memorial, I think, and DeSales, I mean, that would be DeSales' only chances to make the playoffs. So. Extremely unlikely for them to make it. So, but those teams really care about this matchup a lot, and there's a lot of emotions involved. And a lot of times, even when one of the teams is really struggling and the other one's good, which doesn't really happen all that often, but it has happened a few times lately, those games are almost always good. So that'll be an interesting result to watch.
One more game we wanted to make sure to mention, actually, as it turns out we've already touched on it, is 4-5 Lancaster against 6-3 Reynoldsburg. Reynoldsburg is 9th in that region. They got the point, or they got the boost because of the points shakeup that we mentioned earlier. They got a win though to get in. Yeah, I mean, and it would help. It would also help them if Central Crossing could beat Marysville tomorrow night, which is a matchup of teams that on paper are both 3 and 6, although Crossing is now technically 4 and 5. So they'll try to get to 5 tomorrow night.
Yeah,
absolutely. Week 10 already, and next week, wherever we happen to be, we're going to be discussing the first round of the playoffs.
That's right.
And we will let you know eventually where we will be. We will find out eventually as the playoff field shakes out over the weekend, and we will talk to you next Thursday afternoon. For Jarrod, Ulrey, and for Coach John Magistro, I'm Dave Purpura. So long, everybody.